Good evening, everyone. We have a planning meeting here with the county commissioners and ourselves happening right here. First, I'll do roll call of the planning commission. Commissioner Johnson.
Here.
Commissioner Ensted.
Here.
Commissioner Green.
Here.
Commissioner Scott.
Here.
Commissioner Jungling's also here. All right, Mr. Brown, I'll let you take over for new business.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming tonight. For this first part of the joint work session between the Board of County Commissioners and the Lincoln County Planning Commission, staff's done a little PowerPoint presentation as far as kind of a recap of year's activities. And I'll stress that this is as of December 1st. That's when we did the cutoff, so there's still a full month left of applications in development before us. So first of all, for building permits issued, overall, we're staying pretty much even from last year, which was a record year. But this year we noticed that there was a minimal increase, a 4% increase in residential permits over last year. However, there was a 27% decrease in non-residential permits from 2021. And that's our commercial, industrial, agriculture. We lump all of that into the non-residential section. As far as value of construction, there was a 34% increase in residential construction value from 2021. And I'll mention this now and I'll mention in the next slide, is that you'll assume that that was part of inflation. But in the county, when we issue a building permit for residential construction, it's not based on actual construction value. It's based on square footage. So what we've actually seen this year is there was a dramatic increase in the amount of square footage in the houses that we were permitting so far to date. And then 55% decrease in non-residential construction value from last year. And again, that's primarily because of the decrease in the overall permit numbers. As far as building permit fees or development permit fees, and this is where you'll ask the question, well, how come non-residential has a greater development permit fee? That's where we saw the inflation this year. The commercial and light industrial or heavy industrial I-1, I-2 construction, that is based on the actual cost of construction. So as you can see, that cost of construction was reflected in the permit values that were presented. I also mentioned too is that the other would be agricultural. Again, this is much like the last trend over the last 5 years, is that we're decreasing in overall agricultural permits. And again, that's, the macro economy, the micro economy, that's what we're seeing nationwide on that part of it. Other application fees, the largest, as always, is plats, and that's our minor plats. What that really shows is that there's a lot of transfer of property within the rural area of the county. So all those types of activities do require a minor plat. Plats don't go before the Planning Commission or the Board of Commissioners. They are administratively approved, but those are pretty much our biggest work product within the office. Last year, or this year, we've had 34 of 35 conditional use permits were approved by the Planning Commission. The one that was not approved by the Planning Commission, that was East River Electric. That was appealed by the applicant, and that was approved by the Board of Commissioners. So technically, all 35 conditional use permits that were petitioned this year were approved in the county. 9 of those are within the Sioux Falls Joint Jurisdictional Area. A little bit of the detail of those permits, as you are aware, because you deal with them on a monthly basis. But the majority was transfer of building eligibilities and then oversized accessory buildings. And again, in the county or in the rural area, we do require a conditional use permit for accessory buildings over 1,500 square feet if in a subdivision of 4 or more lots. There was 10 petition rezone applications this year. 5 of those were approved, 3 of those were denied, and 2 were in process. The 3 that were denied was Julie Palmer was a petition near the Worthing area to rezone from rural residential to commercial. And then Mark Blow's property just south of Harrisburg, which is a petition to rezone from the A1 to the RR. He had that split lot. And then the third one was Kelly Nielsen's property, which was petitioned to rezone from commercial to I1 light industrial. 2 of those were in process. Both of those were approved or recommended for approval by the Planning Commission at last month's meeting. As far as land use conversion, this year was an anomaly. This is the first time this has happened, that there was more converted in the county and the rural area by petition by rezone than there was by annexation by the cities. If you recall, last year, the city of Harrisburg had over 490 acres of annexed property. This year, they had 153. But again, the rezones by the county, the conversion of ag land to development land was 191 acres, so that was the majority of the conversion this year. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about kind of the big project that the county is going to be undertaking next year, and that's the update to the comprehensive plan. And so as of right now, the current comprehensive plan, again, is a 2005 to 2025. Off to the right is probably the most important component of the comprehensive plan, and that's the future land use map. And again, I was going to mention that last year, I didn't mention it, I mentioned it earlier this year, but last year was the 50th anniversary of planning and zoning within Lincoln County. 1971 was the first comprehensive plan that was adopted by Lincoln County. And then there was a comprehensive plan that was adopted in 1999, 2000, a full comprehensive plan, and then there was a comprehensive plan in 2005. A lot of people ask me, well, why 1971 to 1999, then 1999 to 2005? The 1999 comprehensive plan was a pretty substantial policy document for the county. The component of it was called essential rezoning test. So there was a component of that comprehensive plan that really prohibited all rezones because it established that there'd be a test in order to do the rezone. If it was valuable farmland and some other criteria associated with there. The county did get litigation on that comprehensive plan, and so then they turned around and adopted a new comprehensive plan in 2005. But some statistics, and we'll be talking about this throughout the next year. But I thought it's worth talking about a little bit tonight. So this is a comparison of 2010 census and the 2020 census for Lincoln County. So again, everyone knows that we changed by 20,333 people, and that was a 45% increase. What's of note, though, is that 85% of our population, our people, live within a city, and 55% of our people population lives within the city of Sioux Falls. So you'll hear me say this, and I'll say this again, is that our population is generally urban because it lives within a city. And this is, and again, this is a quick example of what staff's going to show you, but our consultant that's going to work on the comprehensive plan, they're going to look more at demographics and some of those things. Because what this chart is showing is if we looked at the statistical change that occurred, that percentage change, and we multiply that out, which most statisticians will tell you that that's not how you do this because you're not going to always go up, that there becomes a peak and your percentage growth when we're going from low to high, but when we go from high to high to high, the percentage change will change. But this is if it continued at the rate that it was going. And I think what's of note, just to look at this chart, is if you look at the small cities, which is anything other than Sioux Falls, and you look at the rural area, it looks like it's just stagnant or straight across. It's actually going up a little bit, but the growth in Sioux Falls is so dramatic that it buries the fact that the rest of the cities and that the rural area, as far as their population growth. So as you can see, the other thing that you would look at when you see this is Lincoln County's population is directly impacted by the city of Sioux Falls. That's what's going to push the population growth. As far as housing units, from 2010 to 2020, as you're aware that starting in 2010, the census didn't conduct long-form surveys anymore. Everything was a short survey. So we have to look to the ACS, which is the American Community Survey. So this isn't census, this is just survey statistics. But between 2010 and 2020, we had an 8,228 occupied housing unit change. And what's of note of that is that 86% of our housing stock units is within a city, okay? And so 13 or 14% of our housing stock is in the rural area or the unincorporated area. And 58% of our housing stock is located within the Sioux Falls corporate limits. But as you can see, the unincorporated area, which is the rural area, within that time frame, we did grow by 127 housing units. And again, this would be a projection to show if the current trend or the percentage continued from today on, this is what it would look like. Again, the small cities in the rural area is pretty, it doesn't look like there's an increase there, but it actually is increasing quite a bit. It's just that it's overshadowed by what's happening in the Sioux Falls push in that area. This is something else that staff found within the census, which I thought was, this isn't the census, this is in the American Community Survey. This again is an estimate. But if you look at our largest industry growth in Lincoln County is agriculture. You wouldn't think that, and that wouldn't be something that you quickly identify, but over 100% of our industry growth is in agriculture. And then our GIS staff assisted us with this statistic, which I thought was even more interesting. So we had them look at what was the land use in acres of the rural area in 2005 when the county adopted its current comprehensive plan, and what is the current acres right now. And so of note, I'll point out to you that as far as agricultural land use, that's zoning wise, the county has lost 8,854 acres of agricultural zone property. And that's not just development, that's annexation from the cities. The largest increase in land use would be rural residential. So in 2005, that was 801 acres. Currently, it's 1,516 acres. So we converted 715 acres to rural residential property in between 2005 and today. And then there was 6,953 acres that was annexed by the municipalities within the county. And the majority of that would, of course, be the city of Sioux Falls. They had over 2,600 acres that were annexed. And then one other quick thing that I want to talk a little bit about is, so every year I work with you guys on establishing a work plan. That's something that we look at. This year I scaled it back a little bit because, of course, the comprehensive plan is going to be a major undertaking for the Planning Commission and for the county as a whole. But a couple of things that I wanted to focus on a little bit was as far as ordinance amendments. The first would be a zoning map update. That's to take a look at the current zoning map, identify if there's any overlaps, deficiencies, or things that we need to take a look at, and then any other miscellaneous issue ordinances that comes up. As you're aware, this time last year, we proposed an application. The ordinance always allowed for an initiated zoning text amendment. This year we had one of those so far, and that one was to amend the joint jurisdictional ordinance to allow medical cannabis, to look at medical cannabis setbacks as far as residential structures, and that did pass. It was petitioned by a citizen, and it did pass. But as far as annual miscellaneous issues amendments, as you're aware, is that in order for us to undertake some of those, we have to get a resolution or a motion from the Board of Commissioners for us to undertake any of those different types of ordinances. And as of today, there hasn't been any. As far as plans and special projects, the comprehensive plan update would be number one. And again, I'll say this and I'll blue in the face, and you'll say this time next year is yes, that is a major undertaking for the county to do. But the other one is to take a look at fees, application fees. We really noticed this year as far as new development subdivisions, and that is that it did take a toll on as far as the outside consultants that we had to utilize for that. We need to make sure that that's, that the taxpayers are not subsidizing that it needs to be directly paid by the developer. The next one is just other types of land uses that we can do. The third thing is just ongoing initiatives, just to encourage public participation in this process. And then the second one was to explore opportunities for planning outreach. And so, you feel it just like I feel it, that the only time that the public, it seems like we engage them is when they're coming in on a specific topic or an issue. But it would be good to have opportunities just for education and just for reaching out to the public with some of those issues. So that's kind of what I had so far with that. The next part is really just kind of an engagement session between the Planning Commission and the Board of Commissioners as far as some topics or issues that they would like to take a look at. But in between that, if there's anything that you want to reference back to in the presentation or any questions that you have, I'd certainly entertain those at this time.
Toby, the slide you had about the industry growth in Lincoln County, that was based in dollars?
No, that's jobs,
Jobs.
jobs.
Okay.
Yep. Yep.
Your 2023 priorities, Toby. I didn't specifically see anything mentioned on there. At least I didn't think so
Can everybody
regarding.
use their microphone, please?
Sorry, this is Scott Green. I didn't see anything specifically mentioned regarding. We have a lot of conversation in these meetings regarding engagements with the townships and things like that. I don't know if that's kind of lumped into public participation or, but you guys have done phenomenal work, I think, in the year that I've been here in engaging with townships now, and I think, we're starting to get some more feedback into the planning process. But just curious as far as I just don't see township engagement specifically addressed in 2023 priorities.
Yeah, I think I would lump that in just general initiatives, but as far as the comprehensive plan update, they'll definitely be a major stakeholder in the project. And I think I'll answer that question more, is that the comprehensive plan update is not just the planning commission. We also want to reach out to those service providers in the county, the rural waters, the school districts and some of those, but more importantly, the townships, because I think this year of any year, we've really noticed the impact that the development has had on the townships.
Right.
And to make sure that they're involved in the process. And so we do, like you mentioned, we do try to reach out with them at the beginning to make sure that they get a copy of the applications and all that stuff. But, there still needs to be some kind of, and maybe I'll second that, is maybe we need to have a work session with them too. Just invite them and just have a general discussion with topics and issues. But yeah, I think they're more so than any year we've noticed how important they are to what's going on.
Toby, I'd like to say too, good information. You and your staff did a nice job coming up with some of this data. What maybe surprised you the most of any of the information you presented here? Maybe that you didn't expect, or maybe that you did?
Well, I think, the numbers don't surprise us. I mean, we know we're busy doing that kind of stuff. I think what surprised me, I guess, that we didn't put into this presentation is the amount of, what I'll say, the size of the projects we're dealing with lately. And you guys are aware of that, is what I'll say is the two specific rezones we've had this year were whole quarter sections. I mean, we're very familiar with doing, like 5, 10, 20 acres, but this year we had whole quarter sections that were developed. And that, it's not so much, I think we're always going to get lost in the population number in Lincoln County because it's large. But I think what I'm seeing this year is the scale of development that we're encountering is just changing. It's, just in the rural area. It's getting larger. Like, one thing that I would like to do is next spring is to do a bus tour and to go to those ones that I've talked about. We could do a circle loop. You would go out here to I-29 Industrial Park. You would go north to Spielman's Addition, which is just west of T, which is a full quarter of housing development. And then we go look at, Rex Storage. Well, I go back before we go here out the interstate. We take you into the medical cannabis facility. I mean, that's a massive facility. It's it's very fascinating and interesting to tour that and see what they're doing there. But then go up to the north side of town, or the county, which is Meadows Development, the housing development up there, which is a massive. I mean, it's a 40, but it's when you drive by there, it's like they're moving a lot of dirt. So
But it's approximate loss of, you said, of about 8,000 agricultural acres?
that's over the 2005 till today. Yep. So.
Toby, I apologize for being late, but, one of the things that I think that the planning and zoning has to look at, if you look at the ag land that's being sold today, it just isn't ag land. They always list the housing eligibilities. And to me, we have a growing conflict, because if it's farmer that buys this, chances are that building eligibility may not be as important. Or as someone who buys a piece of land and immediately figures out how much money can I get from those housing eligibilities, which puts people out there in ag country, and then you all know what we get to inherit from there. So that's one of the things that concerns me about Lincoln County, because we have so many people that are looking for that magic number of 10 or 15 or 20 acres or whatever. And with the price of land being what it is, a lot of people that will buy are gonna sell those housing eligibilities. And, as I said, then you inherit, a density, becomes more difficult for the guy that wants to engage in livestock or expand his particular holding. So I think that's a challenge that we're gonna have to deal with.
Yeah, I would second that, is that we're hearing more, I'm getting more calls this year than I have in the past from the agricultural producers complaining that they can't buy the land anymore because it's being sold at development rate. And that's not just in the north end, that's in the south end, and that's in our traditional agricultural areas. And I don't know what, it's, really, you have agricultural preservation, which is the goal of your comprehensive plan. And that's really, there's no other option, right? That's preservation. But when we look at development and, and a lot of times you'll ask yourself, well, can we stop this, or what does this all do? I think we need to look at though is, if it's development though, is there low impact development that we could do that wouldn't impact the agricultural community, that wouldn't impact the taxpayers as far as just the overall development impacts of what's going on. But I guess, I'm more curious to hear from you guys, what your thoughts are on some of this stuff too, so.
I think that to add on to Commissioner Schmidt's thoughts and to what you said, Toby, that you're getting more concerned from the ag producers. I think one of the things I get back from a lot of them, just in that industry, and so I talk to a lot of them, is the frustration that that this development can happen right next to them, in their current operations or places where they want to expand. And there really isn't a process of public comment where they can talk about it. It can just happen. Versus if they want to expand, there's quite a process for public comment and conditional use permitting. And I don't know how that looks, but to me, it doesn't seem fair that it can happen that way. That somebody can just build a house right across the road from you with no setback, and ruin your plans for the next 7 generations on what you wanted to do maybe with your land, but you can't do it the other way, as a producer. So I think that's something maybe we can look at too.
Let's explore that for a minute. That's an interesting comment. So if you are sitting there as a producer and you want to expand, you got a generation coming, and so a quarter of land is sold right adjacent to you. That has 3 building eligibilities on it. So somebody tries to market that. Well, is there a way that is within the legal limits that you could say, well, you certainly can build, but you're gonna have to build far enough away so that I have the ability to continue my lifestyle and what I intend to do? I'm not an attorney. We've got too many of those around anyway, but, what is it, Toby? Could you do that?
You'd have
Why
to-
couldn't you?
Yeah, you just change the ordinance.
And that's one of the
Yeah.
Ka-ching.
And that's one of the frustrations that I get from the ag community,
Yeah.
is that, there's 1,000,001 setbacks for everything they want to do, but there's no setbacks protecting them from encroachment of acreages and development.
That's something to explore, though, seriously.
I think so.
If you're gonna maintain your ag base, if you're gonna maintain any semblance of that with the onslaught, you better have some kind of rules and regulations that would protect them, because right now they don't have any.
Yeah, it's a by right currently for them to building eligibility is what Eric's talking about. And the only time it requires a conditional use permit is when we move them, we did a lot of that this year, but we didn't have any public comment on those ones except one, so, yeah, I agree. But That would be a policy change. It would be one that would have to be, to looked at, but
You know, and I'll shut up now. Commissioner, I will shut up. One of the frustrations that I think from the commission standpoint, and you must have the very same thing from the planning and zoning, at least when I was on the board, is we have no means to really communicate with our public. We have no means of really getting the information out to them to know what's going to happen. And I think, the only time a lot of people don't see the red sign or the green sign or whatever for a rezone or something like that. And I think that we owe somehow better communicate either through our papers. Very few of them publish anything but just the minutes from the commission standpoint, and that doesn't say anything. That just says that Commissioner Gibbon made a motion and somebody seconded. But we really never let them know truly what's going to happen, what the long-range effects are, what options they have available. And I can understand why they feel frustrated. Because I'm frustrated, because I don't think we do a good job telling the public what we do and why we do the things we do.
and that transitioned to why we're updating the comprehensive plan. So the comprehensive plan is gonna be that document that allows public input. And at the end of the day, it's gonna be a public-driven document that's gonna lead us to where we wanna go. The comprehensive plan is what we wanna be when we grow up. But you have to look at all the factors of it. And the next part about it has to be a balance too. The hard part about planning and zoning is we can't just go in one direction. We've got equal sides pulling and pushing. So you have to find a balance to what that is. And I think that's all gonna come across for the first time in the county since 1971. What's fascinating, I didn't bring it, I left it in my office, but the 1971 comprehensive plan, when you read it, it tells you everything that we're experiencing today. It saw it back then in 1971, exactly what we're gonna be dealing with today. And in 1971, they adopted right after that a capital improvement plan, which I guess we've never adopted one since, so it's still the one that's in effect. And the number one thing in there is law enforcement jail sites. So I mean, it knew back in 1971 the things that need to be done. Just like in 2023, it's going to know what needs to be done from here on out, and it's going to give us that ability to do that. And we're going to outreach the public. We'll do surveys. We'll do public meetings. We'll do all that to get there. But that's the most important thing that we can do. None of us can predict what's going to happen tomorrow or in the future, but we can outline what we want it to look like. And that's what the comprehensive plan is. And so I'm excited about it because I think it's the first time where the citizens can engage in those. And I agree with Commissioner Spit is the only time people come in here is when they're scared or upset about what's going to be before them, as opposed to knowing that it's like, okay, this is what it's going to be. And then the last thing is that the public comes in here and they see we're not following the current comprehensive plan, then they get really confused, because they're saying, whoa, what's going on here, Because the biggest investment, no matter who you are, no matter what you are, is your property. And so that's an investment that the citizens put in here. And just like I'll go back to is we've had record years. We don't have $2 billion like the city of Sioux Falls has, but we've had record years. But first and foremost, I know that that's not us doing it. It's the private sector that's coming in here and investing in this county. So the proudest I am of our staff is not that they do good or they don't make mistakes or that kind of stuff, is that they treat people that come under office with it. We're glad you're here. You're doing something in the county that's helping us develop and grow. You're investing in this county. And we continue to have that. And we will continue to be the fastest growing county in the state, and we'll be the fastest top 5, 10 in the nation because we do have the ability to develop. But with that comes the need to manage that development, which is what your comprehensive plan is. And so that part of that management is making sure that this is what we want to do. On the flip side of it is for the first time this year, we saw where the city of Sioux Falls was knocking on an existing subdivision from 1970s. So a rural residential subdivision of 12, 15 houses out there, the city's got there. They want to annex them, but do we know what happens when the city gets to those developments to annex them? They say, open your checkbook, right? Because it's It's $100,000, it's $150,000. And in the profession, we call that people losing their houses, right? Because you can't afford that. So typically then you sell the house and somebody else inherits that to go from that. That's pretty tough for that development. I had grown people come in and cry in the office because they're upset, right? 30-year mortgages, they don't know how they're gonna do this. But they recognize they have to do this because it's, the city's gonna come there and extend infrastructure and do all those kind of things. So we need to make sure that when we're approving those types of developments too, that we make sure that it's coming in line with which is what, we worked very closely with Sioux Falls on that last application that you had before the joint, which is the Schindler development. So that development they're gonna put all the city infrastructure in, so when the city gets there, they just turn on the pipes. It's going there. So those property owners are not gonna get stuck with an after-the-fact or retrofit bill. That'll all be geared for them to go. That's costing the developer quite a bit of money on the upfront of it, but it's also just a good planning tool to make sure that all that gets taken care of and does appropriately, I guess, so.
Toby, is our comprehensive plan to be done at the beginning of 2025 or be completed at the end of the year, 2025?
Well, the current comprehensive plan, it has a 2005 to 2025. It doesn't technically expire, that was just the planning phrase that's there. But we'll start in 2023, and I'm working with a consultant right now to bring a contract to the Board of Commissioners for their approval, hopefully in January. But we'll get started right away, and I've told them that we anticipate it'll be done in a year, that it's gonna be an update to the comprehensive plan. So unforeseen any kind of, events or activities or something like that is, we wanna get moving on it and get going on it and be done with it by the end of the next year. So it might carry over partially to adopt into 2024, but it'll be done, so.
It's interesting you bring that up about the rural development, that this is maybe one of the first ones coming. How many more of those are gonna happen, you think, in the next 5 years? Is there some more getting pretty close?
3.
3?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the answer there is, I should say that, is that the cities aren't big bad.
No,
They're gonna get there, and well, the worst part about it is if they don't get concurrence from the property owners, they'll go around them. So then that creates some bigger issues, is that our sheriff has to drive through city limits to get to an emergency, that the rural fire departments have to go through the city to get to an emergency. We don't want that either, and hopefully that doesn't happen, but potentially could, so,
yeah, that's worse yet, I think.
yep.
Yeah, I mean, when we're thinking about these rural developments, I mean, the one thing that we think about and that we talk about is the fact that when the city gets there, the infrastructure and the through roads and things like that aren't really gonna match up with what the city's doing, and so there's gonna have to be a lot of things to change. But you just brought up another point that I hadn't never thought about, is what if the city decides, this is a mess and I don't want you? And then it's still that's a county problem.
Yep.
And that's not awesome either.
And it complicates drainage issues too, correct?
Oh, very much so. Yeah, because if you don't have city sewer, yeah.
Yeah, then on my end, Toby, that creating islands out there for development islands, it just never works. I do think we need growth from the core of the city and grow outward, grow with the municipal. Because if you get islands out there and the city builds around them, and then you got islands inside. So no matter what, those people always have an island, and then it's just hard to adopt everything. And drainage.
Yeah.
That was one of the major reasons I got on the planning and zoning was for drainage, and I see developments come through, and then the farmer down the road can't farm as many acres as he used to, and people have basements, never had water, and they always got flooded out. So, yeah, controlled growth is a key for everything, I think.
I think overall, I mean, the last 3 developments that we've approved, I think we're caught up for the county drainage part of it, as far as the development approvals. I think those last 3 developments have been good approvals. The concern, though, is the regional detention component that the county's not addressing. And that's really just kind of fixing some of the errors that we've had in the past. And the regional detention part of that is just identifying property, buying property, and developing the big detention ponds. But we haven't figured out a way to afford that or to do that in a cost-effective means, but that'd probably be the next phase in drainage part of it. But, yeah, and the other parts of the developments too is that we've noticed a lot more of too is that the roads have become an issue too. As far as in the past, if we approved a private road or if we approved a dedicated right-of-way, and then how that impacts with what the cities are going to be annexing and what we're responsible for, what we need to take care of. So I think we've learned a lot this past year on that angle too. But it's a hard, the biggest thing I say is, Noah's our planner and he's been here 6 months, and you would think that it's, that we're, when I talk to my colleagues across the state or even up north, in Minnehaha County, I'll say, well, this, and this, and they're like, well, that's urban development stuff, and that's what we've really been seeing this year is really urban type development. The scale of it, the complexity of it is just greater than what I think we've experienced in the past, so.
And that's, but as we're still talking about the rural developments, the other thing that we don't talk about that much and probably should is, we talk about the impact that they'll potentially have on the municipality, and that we think it would be better to have that in the municipality just because that they can service it. What we don't talk about is the impact that it has on our county, our county resources, i.e. sheriff, roads, so on and so forth, when they're basically not designed to service municipalities, but when we're allowing mini municipalities to pop up all over in the country, and then say, well, now they're in charge of that. I don't think that's the way that the county services were designed probably either.
Well, I would say even more, and that's a good point that you bring up. I'll try to get out of this so I can show you something here. But so this was another thing that kind of popped up this year that so sometimes we forget to, and I'm going to add that is really what I want to show you here is school districts. Sometimes we forget that, like the city of Canton, and I'm going to show you that right now, which will probably surprise most of you here. So that's the Canton School District. It goes up into 57th Street. And so a lot of the development along the golf course and some of those areas, what's going to happen? Are we, the same thing, with Harrisburg. It was the spurt of Harrisburg was Sioux Falls growth, building schools there. Do we put busing pressure on some of these school districts with some of this outward development and things like that? And I think, again, this gets back to the comprehensive plan is that they're going to be an integral part of their stakeholders on that process to say is, okay, what's the impacts here? We just had one. This is the Peters edition. If you remember that one, it's just off of 117. Part of that development was in the Lenox and the T School District. So they came to an agreement just recently to give it all to Lenox. But, the development was happening so fast that it covered 2 school districts where it was never established. They never considered that part of it, so. And then, the next thing you look at too is like, I think about this quite a bit is outside of Sioux Falls, these are all volunteer emergency management people, fire departments. And, one is that we always talk about is the Harrisburg Volunteer Fire Department. I mean, literally, I've seen accidents on just south of 57th Street where the Harrisburg Fire Department's there, and you can literally look and see the Sioux Falls Fire Station, within a few blocks, And so, again, it's all kinds of pressure on those types of things and the impacts that it has on them. But again, the issues that we have, 60-some other counties would be begging to have some of these issues because it's beneficial for what we have. We just have to find a way to manage it as we move forward.
Toby, do you have the ability to put the growth area of Sioux Falls, T, and Harrisburg on a map?
Yep, I'll show you.
Because some point in time, they're all going to grow together.
Yeah, see, Sioux Falls is gonna grow to 106. This is our growth area. Harrisburg, it's a little hard to see unless you zoom right in on it. But that's one thing, the highway superintendent and myself are working with the city of Sioux Falls and the city of Harrisburg on a study of 271st Street or 106. And, we're talking about what's it gonna look like, what's the design, what's the setbacks and things like that. And then even, the dumb planner, my question is, what are we gonna name the thing, right? It's like, you're on the north end of Harrisburg, you're on the south end of Sioux Falls, what do we call the thing, and how do we continue to do that? And if you don't know how complicated it is when you have to change an address from something with the post office box, that's not an easy process to do. And so we try and get ahead of that thing. And then the other part about it that I'll talk to you about more and through the comprehensive plan process is the Highway 18 reconstruct was a lesson learned for all of us. They literally moved houses there because they were built too close to the road. And people never thought, and most of those houses were built before we had zoning, but they never thought. But I'm gonna say 99% of the houses that we permit in the county right now, they're right at the setback. And these are off of roads that we all know are gonna be expanded, right? And developments, the Meadows development on the 106 side and things like that, those houses will be right on the thing, and that'll be a full 3 line going through there. So when you say ditch, that means road is coming and will be there, so. But that's something that we need to work on too.
So with that, are you thinking about maybe revisiting those setbacks?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Because it's just not the roads too, it's utilities.
yep,
We got rural water, you got, transmission lines, you got, distribution lines. Everything needs to go in that space also.
but a lot of people, I do, I anecdotally tell people when they're coming in, if they come in, I'll just say, yeah. Well, the immediate response they get back is, well, I don't want to maintain a driveway going that far back. So they're thinking it's like, okay, now, yeah, I got to measure an extra 50 feet on that driveway that I might have to plow out or something like that. But no, you're going to have an expressway in your front living room here pretty quick.
Or have to move your house.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And, and I think that was a good comment too, is,
Carbon pipeline
the highway
up there,
superintendent and I have
too. My
been
God,
we try to
get
involve
that
quite a
in
bit
there.
is because,
Got
we
so much
start putting
room to put
driveways
it in
on
down
these county corridors and things like that. The roadways in the county and the state are meant to get people going, right? And we don't want to slow them down. We don't want to create conflict points and stuff like that. So we need to look at that kind of issues. On the flip side of, if we put them on the township roads, we're burdening the townships, right? Which is really where they probably should be in terms of it, but it's burdening the township. So there's not an easy answer to that part of it yet. But the highway superintendent and I are also participating with the state. They're doing a corridor study of Highway 11 and 115. And I think that even shocked them, the amount of numbers, the traffic counts came back on.
Really?
And they're literally, when they start talking about, well, we're gonna put stoplights out in the rural area. And that doesn't work well because people don't assume I'm going 55 down the road and then I'm gonna come to a dead stop at a stoplight, so. But there's such traffic volumes out at some of these intersections that might be the only alternative that we have. So. But again, development's a good thing to have. We just have to find a way to manage it to what everybody's gonna work, or a balance of what's gonna work for everybody, moving forward. But with that, I intend to, this presentation, we'll put that, we are live streaming this, but we'll put this presentation on next month's planning commission agenda so that the public can look at the presentation. But hopefully it kind of shows you some things that we'll be talking about over the next couple months as far as what's occurring, what's happening in the real world, as far as some developments and things like that. And then, like I mentioned, I'd really like to take a bus trip in the spring just to kind of show you guys the impacts of some of the things that are out there and what we're doing and how it works, I guess. So, but with that, I really just wanted you guys as a boards to kind of talk and discuss and ask each other questions. I know that this is the only time once a year that you can do that. Otherwise, your recommending body is the planning commission, and a lot of that just goes up as a recommendation, but if you have some questions or concerns or things you want to talk about, certainly do that.
I guess my question for the Board of Commissioners would be, how do you see the growth? I mean, is there anything that we are doing as a planning commission that you would like to see different? I guess, not different, really, just how would our philosophies become together, or how can we be on the same philosophy?
Just to build off of-
Maybe I should ask the question
Ve-
earlier, we have time to.
To build off of what Jerry's saying, and I agree, is, do you guys agree with some of the with the majority, I mean, with the way we're recommending things and the way we're seeing things?
Because I think really our philosophy in the last, I'd say, year and a half has been, as I said, not to develop islands, to kind of develop from the municipals out, where we can bring water, sewer, utilities, and emergency services along with the growth, and try not to have islands out there where we can.
Jerry, I think what we need, it's a good question, and I appreciate everybody's service on the board, because everybody's opinion has been valuable. But what we really need at this point is we need a new comprehensive plan. Because what I'm saying, or you're saying, or anybody's opinion right now, it's just that, it's our opinion, right? And some of it is based upon who we talk to, some of it's based upon who we represent and what those interests are. But at this point in time, what we need to do now in order to manage the kind of growth that we're gonna see, we're already late doing this. So I appreciate the fact that the commission passed the funding to make this happen. Because I've had numerous people, especially people out in Spring Creek, who are really impacted by county planning decisions. Because folks in Sioux Falls don't come up to me and say, hey, what about that planning and zoning decision you made, right? Because the city takes care of those. So I still have a lot of folks in half of my district who are very affected by these decisions. And they're ready to participate in this process. And I think that'll be the biggest thing that comes out of this. Toby and I have talked about this is a multi-phase process, right? Phase number one is we need to get the county comprehensive plan done. And that's gonna give us a better look at what things are gonna look like from the grassroots perspective. Because people are gonna come out of the woodwork wanting to have opinions that are going to expose things that maybe nobody here is even talking about. On the other hand, there's going to be a lot of issues raised by them that you all talk about as well. But so that opinion is going to be valuable. But number two, I think the other phase of this that may come about in a year or two from now is we need to relook at the comprehensive plan in the joint jurisdictional area. Because those growth targets, some of the growth targets are off in terms of we're going to exceed them. But some of those growth targets, you talk to Sioux Falls city councilors, we're not going to hit them by 2040. We're not, we're looking at 2060 maybe. And some of that is because the city of Sioux Falls is throttling growth with regard to sewer and water. They can determine whether we have growth down in the joint jurisdictional area by the timing and sequencing of when they input sewer and water in there. We had the folks from the city council who came in here and gave a presentation and said that they predicted 70,000 homes could be sited in the joint jurisdictional area. But that they're not going to do that right now. I think it's another couple, you work for the city, but it's another couple of years before they're going to start allowing that growth to happen. So I think before all that happens, though, let's get the county comprehensive plan going, but also we need to turn the page as well. We need to relook at the joint jurisdictional comprehensive planning as well. Because my folks who come and talk to me all the time, they're like, we had the Aggie development. Well, the Aggies had to go through a lot of pain with the city of Sioux Falls to get that approved. And to the credit of the city, they did determine that they were outside those growth tier areas. And then you got the Kathy Kruger development out there. And the issues that we had, she had to sue the city and spend tens of thousands of dollars just to be able to do what she's gonna do. Citizens shouldn't have to sue their own government to use their own land, in my mind. Now granted, there's other equities involved there, right? Lincoln County Rural Water and others. But the administrative hearing officer said, hey, Kathy Kruger's right. You can't connect what's going on in Sioux Falls right now to what's going on with your development. You're just too far off. And then, of course, you got the other developments as well that are coming up. So what I'm interested in is updated comprehensive plans so we can avoid those kinds of things.
And I think that plan will guide our economic development when you look at our Highway 18 corridor and other projects too. I mean, I have people talk to me and say, well, I'd like to do this and this and this, and it probably doesn't meet your comprehensive plan right now in Lincoln County, but it will meet yours probably in the future, so I want to get this going now, and you can't blame engineers and so on and so forth, because if they don't do some of this for them, they lose their clients, and so they're going to continue to challenge you as a planning and zoning and us as a commission until we do have this new plan in place.
I want to answer your question. The points that Commissioner Aaron's has made, I think that before, in answer to your question on what you have done an excellent job because you followed the guidelines that were in front of you. And that's what you had to work with. So, did you do okay? Fine. I think the commission has to sit down and figure out what we're going to do, what our county is going to look like. Our commission we've never spent any time on strategic planning. As a commission, as the department heads, utilizing you as well. So we have a comprehensive idea. We just don't put ordinance down. We don't put anything down. We look at ourselves. We had a fan committee that came in and evaluated our budget process. So we've got some ideas which are very good and suggestions that they've made, which we've never followed up on. So I think after the first of the year, it is incumbent upon this commission to spend a day looking at what any organization does, any business, anybody spends time looking strategically at their future. Where the hell we're going to go, and what are we going to look like in the next 10 or 15 years? Because you can't cherry pick. You can't know, what is our thing? How much of an ag base do we want to maintain? How much encroachment are we going to have from the cities? How long before these entities, these municipalities, start growing and etching into? So, and how are we going to afford all this? What's our tax base going to be? What are we going to do? I mean, right now, we're going to spend a hell of a lot of money trying to put courtrooms in because we have to do that. So these are the kind of things that, to me, we have to sit down and do before we put down the guidelines on what you guys get to follow. That's just my take on it.
Yeah, I agree, and I think the number one thing is, it's all about communication. I mean, the development community, the city of Sioux Falls, the Lincoln County, we need to know what each other is doing and planning before one can, say, hey, we're going to do this without knowing what the other is doing. So I do think it all comes down to communication. It has to be more meetings. No one cares a ton for more meetings, but, those talking sessions face-to-face are important. Yeah, we still have roughly 21 minutes. Is there more discussion? I see some wheels turning.
I guess just a little more on the comprehensive plan. What's the process other than that we're working with a consultant? Does that get brought to the Board of Commissioners or to the Planning and Zoning or both of us or on decisions like what goes, stays, changes?
So the commission authorized $100,000 to update the comprehensive plan. And so I'm working right now with a consultant to prepare a scope of work, which a scope of work will present to the Board of Commissioners, and the Board of Commissioners will approve that scope of work. The scope of work, by state law, the Planning Commission is the one that's supposed to develop and give recommendation on the adoption of the comprehensive plan. But what we'll probably do is have stakeholder groups, and the stakeholder groups will be citizens, they'll be, professionals, there'll be interested parties in the issue. We'll also do surveys, we'll also do public meetings. But I would envision probably once a month is that the consultant will be meeting with the stakeholders. And then that night, we're gonna try and schedule them so it's the same night, so we can save a little bit of money on that part of it. But the same night, they'll come to you and present some chapters and some of those issues. If you look at the current comprehensive plan, 99% of it is just static data. It's kind of what the data is as of today. The meat of it is really what's our goals, policies, objectives, and what does our future land use map look like. That I see being more of kind of the input part of it, as far as a lot of it will be kind of the statistics that I presented tonight, that they'll update those and go through that. What's been beneficial is that the reason that we're saving a little bit of money on this is that the transportation plan's been updated, the master drainage plan's updated. Those are all major components of drainage, and transportation is huge things as far as land use planning. So that'll all be part of it. So, but in saying that, our role really from staff and from the Planning Commission is project management, just to make sure it comes in on time and it comes in on budget, and if there's other stuff that gets off kilter, that we address it. But I've said this before, and I said it with the master drainage plan, is that my goal is to really make it a bottom-up plan, that the citizens drive it up to where they want it to be. Because it's really, they're the ones that are the private investment in the county. And the county is just administering this to get to the point that we need to get to. And I'll feed off a little bit of what Commissioner Aaron said, is there's actually more than just step 1 and 2. There's about 12 other steps after that. But the most important one will be is that, and this you'll be completely exhausted after next year. But then after that, when we adopt new policy or a new comprehensive plan, you have to, in state law, South Dakota is a little bit different than Minnesota and than other surrounding states. Minnesota actually they changed their state statute to be like ours. But in South Dakota, you can't have zoning unless you have a comprehensive plan. So that's why half of our counties don't have zoning, but the ones that do have a comprehensive plan because they have to. But the next phase after you adopt a policy or a comprehensive plan is you have to look at your zoning regulations, which is your implementation tool. Your comprehensive plan is your vision, your policy, but your zoning is your law. And I always say this, and everybody kind of looks at me cross-eyed, but last year, a major project that the auditor's office and our department and other departments did was we codified all of the laws within the county, the local laws. And if you go to government on the ordinance and you go to ordinances, these are all of the local laws in the county. And the majority of them are land use regulations. So our zoning, our subdivision, our joint zoning ordinance, our nuisance code, that's all enforced by our office. And then all the rest of this. But anytime there's a law, the rule of law, that's within these code of ordinances. And so when we adopt the new comprehensive plan, my guess is there's going to be new policies. There's going to be new things that we don't currently have right now. Well, in order to implement that, you have to adopt zoning. You have to make amendments to your zoning. So the following year will be a major update to the zoning code to make sure that we're in line with it. And the one that I'll give you for an example is that in 1995 was the biggest land use policy that the county adopted or turned into a law, and that was density zoning, the building eligibility, what Commissioner Schmidt talked about. What they didn't assess until last year in the county on property was your building eligibility. Because they couldn't figure out how come this bare 1 acre land is going for hundreds of thousands of dollars. So upstairs, the equalization office started incorporating building eligibilities into that. So we spend a lot of our time just identifying building eligibility locations where they're at and that kind of a thing. But that's a by right use. That's a by right value. Right now in the open market for an acre of land and a right to build with the building eligibility is anywhere, and it's a private market issue, but we're seeing 300, 500,000. The price is unlimited. And it's all over the county. What I think is interesting, and I'll go back to that, is that statistic that I showed you as far as population growth. All the red are the ones that decline in population from 2010 to 2020. With obvious, that's all of our southern counties, minus Lincoln Township and I think Norway Township. But those are all our southern counties. But what you're going to find interesting, though, is coming in the next 10 years is the greatest number of houses we built over the last 2 years has been in those townships that declined in population. And that's what Commissioner Scott was talking about, is that we've had, what I'll say is the southwest part of the county, where the dairies are and those kind of things. We've had the greatest new houses within that township, within those dairies, which totally impacts or limits their future development in those areas too. Not saying that's good or bad, I'm just saying it's the truth, it's fact. And then I'll get back to one other comment that I want to make too is, when you look at these population projections and things we do here, I think anybody's going to tell you this. You know, they'll always point out in the current comprehensive plan, well, look, they totally missed the population. You know, the population projection was like 40-some thousand, we hit 70,000. The reality of it was, again, is 80%, 90% of that growth was in the cities, which we don't have any control or jurisdiction over. So that stuff just happened the way it happened. But I will tell you this, that you're right now going to see with the 85th Street interchange and with the Veterans Parkway, and I'm going to say even the Veterans Parkway I think is going to be bigger than the 85th Street interchange because I think there's more land that's going to develop along those. You're going to see massive amounts of development in those areas. It's going to happen. I mean, you build it and they will come. I mean, the Veterans Parkway, you're creating a road in the middle of nowhere right now. And so, I mean, it's gonna create development, annexations and development. There'll all be city development along there. But whatever we can project and whatever they project next year in a comprehensive plan, it's never gonna come close because the amount of development and growth that we're gonna have over the next 10 years is gonna be scaled at a greater level than what you're occurring now. So. That's, you know, but getting back to it is I think we should be, I think we're excited, regardless of whatever the macro economy is doing at this stage and stuff like that, is that we're still, the other part of this issue too is that if you look at this, I think you'll find this fascinating too, is that this was the 2022 estimate, which is essentially 2 years from this date. Look at what we grew from there to there. And that's greater than ever. And I'm going to say one reason for that is for the first time in South Dakota over the last 2 years, we had more migration into the state than we've ever had. Traditionally, South Dakota's just been they grew up in the middle of the state and they moved to Sioux Falls. Now we're getting more people moving into the state that weren't born here. Or they're being born here in a year. So it's just, there's a lot of dynamics that are happening right now that are making the amount of growth extraordinary. But again, I'll say that what I'll say again. In 1971, when you read that comprehensive plan, they knew exactly what we're experiencing today. My goal is with the comprehensive plan that we adopt in 2023, when we get to that 20-year time frame, they'll be able to look at that and say they knew at that time what was going to be happening at that time. And that's the biggest challenge that you have with planning. So. But with that, we can certainly end the meeting early and just take a 10-minute break before we start too, so. unless there's any more comments or questions.
Yeah, only thing I have to say yet is thank you again for approving the funds for that comprehensive study. That's going to be huge for our community and our county. And thank you, Toby, for all your work. All right, if there's nothing else, we'll take a few minutes before Planning and Zoning Commission starts. Good evening, everybody. It is now 6:30, and I call to order this meeting of the Lincoln County Planning Commission. As a reminder, the meeting is being recorded, and the order of events tonight will be as follows. For each public hearing, staff will introduce the agenda item and present a summary of the staff report. The applicant then will be asked to explain their proposal in further detail and to answer any questions from the Planning Commission. I will then open up the floor to public comment, first in support of the application and then in opposition of the application. When you step up to the podium, please state your name, address, and speak clearly into the microphone. Each speaker will have a chance to speak once and should keep their comments to less than 5 minutes. Any questions, please address the commission, and we'll try to get those questions answered for you. Speakers are encouraged to only address new and relevant information pertaining to the item. And above all, please be cordial to all meeting participants and refrain from side conversations and speaking out of turn, or you'll be asked to leave. Lastly, decisions on rezoning applications will be scheduled for an additional public hearing during the upcoming County Board of Commissioners meeting. Decisions on conditional use permit applications may be appealed to the County Board of Commissioners by submitting a letter to the County Planning and Zoning Office within 5 business days. All right, with that, we'll look for approval of the meeting minutes. So commissioners, you've seen our meeting minutes from our last meeting. Have you any changes or comments on those? Seeing none, I'll ask for a motion for approval.
I do have one question on the minutes.
Yeah.
So on agenda item, 3 and 4, it has yeas by Instead. He wasn't here that last month. It says roll call vote taken, yeas, Hogan, Instead, Green. He wasn't here or voted.
Yeah, you weren't here, right? Correct?
That would be the only change I would have.
All right.
They were unanimous votes by the commission, by the Planning and Zoning Commission last month, but Instead wasn't here.
All right, we have adjustment to the meeting minutes from last of removing Instead from the roll call in items 3 and 4. Any other discussion?
So that we do need, so Anstead wasn't here, but Johnson was here, so Johnson needs to replace Anstead in those items.
Okay.
With those changes, I would make a motion to approve.
I'll second, Scott.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the meeting minutes with the changes we talked about before. I'll do roll call. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Ensted?
Yes.
Commissioner Green?
Yes.
Commissioner Scott?
Yes.
Commissioner Landine?
Yes.
And Commissioner Jungling is also a yes. With that, we'll move to the approval of tonight's meeting agenda. Are there any changes for tonight's agenda, Mr. Brown?
No changes, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Commissioner, I'll ask for a motion on tonight's agenda.
So move, Landine.
Second, Johnson.
Motion and a second. Any additional conversation? Seeing none, I'll do a roll call. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Ensted?
Yes.
Commissioner Green?
Yes.
Commissioner Scott?
Yes.
Commissioner Landine?
Yes.
Commissioner Jungling is also a yes. All right. At this time is one of my favorite times, We'll ask for public inputs on anything that's not on the agenda tonight. If anybody wants to share with us anything or concerns, come on forward. Seeing none, I'll close the floor to public input, and we'll move to our first application. Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. This first item before you is an application for a rezone. Specifically, the applicant for this item is Corey Kyle and Casey Hahn. The property owner is Casey and Sarah Hahn, and the location of this property is approximately 2.5 miles to the northwest of the city of T. Comprehensive plan identifies this property as future agricultural area. As you can see, the property is currently zoned A1 agricultural. All surrounding properties are like zone. The property is developed with agricultural structure. The agricultural structure is currently utilized for a medical cannabis cultivation operation. That item is a permitted special use within the zoning regulations of Lincoln County, so it does not require any public hearing. It does, though, require an application and approval from the Board of Commissioners for operation or license operation. That was approved, and the operation is currently in effect at this time, or operational. The applicant did submit a concept plan with the application. What the applicant intends to do, and I'll let the applicant kind of go into further detail on any questions that you might have. But again, the structure that's currently, there's one existing structure on the property that is utilized for a medical cannabis cultivation facility. The applicant is proposing to expand that operation into the manufacturing operation. Manufacturing of medical cannabis is only allowed in the I-1 light industrial district in the unincorporated rural area. And so instead of rezoning to a strictly I-1 light industrial district, the property, which would permit this, but would also open up additional uses. And then as well as it wouldn't fit within the comprehensive plan as far as it being an agricultural area, I identified that this would be an option would be to rezone this property to a planned development district. And the planned development district would limit it to the existing uses on the property, which is medical cannabis cultivation, and then allow medical cannabis manufacturing on the property. And if approved, the existing property then would be zone planned development district in that area. So staff did develop an ordinance. Again, a planned development is not a conventional zoning district. It is one that you essentially create and specify those uses that are allowed within it. The name of this proposed planned development district would be Pure Bliss Planned Development District. And again, it would be allowed a cannabis cultivation facility. The standards that identified in the ordinance would be the same that are those that are within the conventional A1 agricultural zoning district, as well as the cannabis product manufacturing would be the addition. And then the use of agriculture would be retained on that property. And then all supplemental regulations, as you can see, accessory parking, sign, density, would all be in accordance with the A1 agricultural district. So again, all of the setbacks and all of the other requirements would be the same as what's in the A1 agricultural district. So staff did review this application. I did have some conversations with the applicant and did identify that this would be an approach that would allow for a conventional zoning change and allow for, so a specific amendment to the ordinance that would be crafted by the Planning Commission, by the Board of Commissioners. So staff did identify that this application, again, with the ordinances in place and the comprehensive plan, that this would be consistent with those regulations. And again, we did propose an ordinance that could be reviewed and identified by the Planning Commission. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have for staff at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Commissioners, any questions for staff?
What was the staff recommendation, Toby?
It's consistent with the comprehensive plan.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. I also wanted, and probably the applicant could explain this a little bit better too, but so if this rezoning is, again, your role tonight is to give a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners. If it is approved by the Board of Commissioners, it just allows then the applicant to apply to the Board of Commissioners for an additional license for medical cannabis manufacturing. So there's some hoops and hurdles and additional public hearings that will have to be gone through for this. But again, when we adopted the medical cannabis regulations, there was always talk about vertical integration, which was incorporating multiple uses on the same property in the same building. The zoning ordinance, separated those. But as we're learning more about what the medical cannabis manufacturing is, it almost seems like a byproduct of the agricultural production of the cannabis on the site. And I'll let the applicant talk a little bit more about it, but from a staff perspective, we're questioning if it is truly light industrial type use. It doesn't appear to be from what we're understanding from the applicant. So, but with that, I'll answer any more questions, and then the applicant is in attendance.
Toby, if it would pass to plan development, would this be the only thing that could be there
Yes.
in the future? If they were gonna do something else, that would have to go through a whole nother process.
Have to be amended. Yep.
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 Yeah, that was my main question also. All right, commissioners, any other questions?
Thank you.
All right, at this time, I'll ask the applicant to come forward and tell us a little bit more about their proposal.
Thank you guys for your time. My name's Corey, last name Kyle, Kyle. So yeah, we are an existing medical
Excuse me,
cannabis.
Corey, can I get your address, please?
Oh yeah, physical address or home address is 5100 East 61st Street, Sioux Falls, South Dakota, 57108. So we're an existing medical cultivation facility. We've been running up and running for 9 months now. And yeah, as Toby had said, we kind of want to vertically integrate in with manufacturing. Our manufacturing, the way that we do it is it's implemented as a solventless extraction. This process is completely solventless. It utilizes only ice and water, and we will be extracting in an existing 16 by 20 room on our facility, so there will be no additional construction or anything at this time. And we don't have any future plans of adding to the facility at this time. And then also with that completely solventless process, there is zero negative effect on existing agricultural land or anything like that. Sometimes manufacturing is done with solvents and some chemicals that can kind of be a little dangerous to work with. The way that we do it is literally just like a cold pressed coffee, just water and weed. So, any questions?
Okay, thank you, Corey. Commissioners, any questions for the applicant?
So you guys are currently, you're growing on site there right now?
Yep,
And
we've been
in-
operating
In
for a
that
while.
building that's
Yep.
on the map? Okay.
Yep.
And so you just want to take the product that's there and?
Yeah, we just have a room that's available, and we just the way that we manufacture doesn't take up too much space. We can utilize it right in that existing room, and yeah, like I said, don't have to bring any we don't need to bring in any dangerous chemicals or anything like that. Everything's just existing on the property.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
So the, having everything on site is why you'd prefer to do a plan development versus relocate this to the light industrial, which it's really meant to be?
Yeah, yeah, just because of where we're the little amount of space that it takes. Yeah, we don't need to do any kind of additions or building out at this time. So.
Couple questions I have. How much more traffic is this going to bring? Is there going to be, I know you said no chemicals, but
Yeah.
would be additional
Um,
trucks, traffic, just
Traffic,
distribution?
none. Yeah, there would be. We do all the distribution and stuff on our in-house staffed, so that would be the same. Sales and everything would continue to be in-house. It wouldn't be any additional traffic or anything.
Okay. One of our concerns is always condition of the roads and the
Yeah,
townships.
Yeah,
and that,
absolutely.
so.
Yeah. No, there's we have 11 staffed employees right now, and This would maybe bring on one more additional staffed employee, but that would be it, just to help with day-to-day operations, so.
And then I suppose this questions are related to zoning, so, all right, any other questions? All right, thank you, Corey.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, guys.
All right, at this time, I'll ask anybody in favor of the application come forward and speak.
Hi, my name is Greg Best, and I live at 5200 South Rateliff Avenue, number 4. And I'm in favor of everything going on with that. Like Corey was stating, everything we're going to be doing is completely solventless. We're pretty much just mixing ice, water, and cannabis. And we just want to be able to make manufactured products like edibles and stuff like that on premises and not have to outsource that to anywhere else. So. Yeah, that's pretty much all I had to say about it.
All right, thank you, Greg.
Yep.
All right, anybody else in favor of the application? All right, I'll ask anybody in opposition of the application, please come forward.
Good evening. My name is Dennis Couts. Address is 46533 270th Street, T, South Dakota. One of my questions for the Planning Commission is related to the intent of the Plan Development District. 154.195 lists out all of the intents. I guess my question is related to subsection B. It specifically states it is not the intent of the Plan Development District to accommodate or encourage the development of isolated small tracts where adjoining parcels are not considered with an overall development scheme. That seems to be in direct opposition to what they're suggesting here. To go along with that, obviously, light industrial is what the information I read says that the manufacturing of a cannabis product should be zoned under, and they did not go that direction. They went the direction of a planned development district. So it seems to be in conflict with the intent of the overall planned development district wording. And I guess I'm curious from the council, am I misinterpreting that? Is there some misunderstanding related to what I'm reading in that language?
All right, Dennis, I think we'll ask, when we get through public comment, we'll ask Mr. Brown to address that. We'll bring him up after a little bit, but we'll get that question answered for you.
All right, perfect. Other concerns that I have, obviously, the potential for a criminal element. You're manufacturing a product out there that could draw people to the area that are undesirable for the residences that live in that area. We have seen an increase to traffic. The building that they're using now, they have 10-plus cars there today. It has had an impact. Soft roads in the springtime, certainly deteriorating those roads rather quickly. The addition of one additional car isn't going to make that big of a difference, but who knows where this business will scale or grow. So my concern is they'll be back here in front of you asking for additional zoning changes if and so that business grows additionally. So, yeah, in general terms, I'm just struggling a little bit with kind of the overall intent of the building. It was the first time I'd heard that they're not intending to add any additional facility. But I don't think that changes my belief that what they're trying to do inside that building is definitely not what the planned development district was intended for.
Okay, we'll get those answers for you, Dennis.
Thank you.
All right, are there any other, anybody else in opposition of the application?
My name is Thomas Waldner, 46549 270th Street. I live across the street from Han. And I didn't get a notice, or anything like that. It says, when I built I know that goes back to when I built, but oversized shop, and I had to give 6 people a notice that, I'm doing this, and I didn't get anything. And also, they wouldn't let me build anything where I can bring people in and work. They let me build an oversized building so I can store stuff, but not bring people in and work. So I, spend money that I don't have on a lot in T, at the T exit to build myself a shop. And I really believe that's what they should do. That's all I have.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Anybody else in opposition of the application? All right. With that, then I will close the floor to public input. I think before we ask for a motion, Mr. Brown, could you help with a couple of those questions?
I have a couple for him too.
Is that?
I got a couple for him too.
Okay, yeah. Well, we want to make sure we get everything answered the right way, so we might take a minute to find their answers.
So the first item I'd address is Thomas Waldner was not on the mailing list. Again, the mailing list goes out to 500 feet of described property. So his property is outside of that area. So I believe the question was referencing the intent of the planned development district. And so, again, there's some criteria for what the intent of the planned development district is. I guess when staff looked at this, there is many planned development districts that don't incorporate multiple land uses or don't incorporate isolated small tracts in the county. That is a criteria that you as the board can look at. But what we looked at this is that it would not support rezoning it to specifically an I-1 light industrial district. That would open up too many land uses and too many conflict points. This option allows the planning commission, the board of commissioners, to adopt a specific regulation for just that and limit it just to that property. Again, if you interpret it to meet that intent, then that's the interpretation of the planning commission too. So, okay.
Yeah, I do like it. I guess I do like it this way, just because if we rezone it for industrial, it could be this today, but tomorrow it could be a tire manufacturing plant, or the next day it could be something else industrial, where this limits the use to this particular, and we don't have to worry about in the future expanding to something different than they intend today.
Yep.
So, a couple questions, Toby. So what they're doing there today, that falls under just the A1 agriculture? Is that the way I understand it?
Yes.
And then, the further processing of this is either needs to be in light industrial or planned development?
Correct.
That's correct? And so the way, I guess that's my question, is why is it either or? Why isn't it one? Why wasn't it just light industrial? Or just planned development?
Well, so again, the planned development is a create district. So we created that to allow that use within there. The I-1 is the only conventional zoning district that is allowed currently. So there's
Okay.
only one. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So it'd be the I-1, yep.
Yep.
All right, any other questions for Toby, commissioners? Thank you, Mr. Brown, I
Yep, thank you.
appreciate you clarifying that.
Am I allowed to comment?
I'm sorry, we did public input. All right, with that, we have, I'll ask for a motion so that we can discuss amongst ourselves.
So is the motion for plan development, or are we considering the ordinance? I guess I want to make sure we're clear on, is it the ordinance or is it the rezone of A1 agricultural to the plan development district?
I believe it's the rezone, correct?
So the applications are rezoned, but what you're recommending would be the ordinance amendment, which is the plan development district, yes. So it's a typical rezone. You're gonna recommend adoption or recommend denial of the ordinance amendment. So
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to move to recommend denial of the amendment of the rezone.
Second, Green.
All right, we have a motion and a second to recommend denial. Did I hear that correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right, we have a motion. We can have a conversation.
Mr. Chairman, I think the plan development is probably my least favorite of the quandaries we get presented with here. I can sympathize with the applicants as far as it being a startup business and trying to simplify being on the same grounds. But right now, the ordinance is to have that processing in a light industrial situation, even though it doesn't sound like it takes up very much space. I think that's where we need to channel it for our committee, because we have a lot of agricultural areas that could potentially be growing marijuana or cannabis in the near future. And if we set the precedence that we're going to let a smaller operation also process the product, we've done that for potentially a lot of different operations. So that's why I would recommend the denial.
I'm going to agree with Commissioner Johnson on everything he said, and just add to the fact that we've had similar situations to this in front of us where we have people that want to start businesses at their homes or want things zoned a certain way because for convenience purposes, right? It's already there. And for betterment and logic of the greater plan for the county, we deny those based on the way the comprehensive plan reads. And if this is supposed to be in light industrial, I think that's where we keep it. I also agree, I'm not a big fan of the plan development because it just seems like that's when something doesn't fit, let's just make it that. That's been my take on it. So therefore, I guess I'll be in favor of the motion.
Okay.
I'm going to be voting no on the motion, just simply because I'm looking at it a little differently. When people come to us for a rezone to industrial, once something falls within those parameters, an applicant can essentially do what they want as long as it falls within the permitted uses in that type of a district. This is more precise, so I think this is giving us more control over what's going to happen there. I think, going forward, if they were going to do, spot zone and make that an industrial area, to me is going to be a very difficult thing for them to accomplish with our commission. So I think that this is appropriate in this case. So I'll be voting no on the motion.
Any additional comment, commissioners?
There again, I don't think I'd be in favor of making it light industrial. I just think the process needs to find a light industrial place to do its business, would my opinion,
Yeah,
on the processing end.
I agree.
I do understand, I see where everyone's saying. Also, the way I look at it too is we're brought forward something that we follow our process and the way our ordinances are written right now. And this is what we have in place right now. If we change in the future, that sure could be. Yeah, it does seem weird to have something zoned industrial in the middle of a ag area. But also, this does help us control everything that is happening on that piece of property. It is going to be just this. And if they ever expand or do anything in the future, then they have to apply for conditional use permits for bigger buildings, additional buildings, and all that stuff where we would have that also.
But, so I feel like the conversation's got sideways just a little bit. We're not discussing the difference between, is this gonna be planned development or is this gonna be light industrial? What we're discussing is it gonna be planned development?
Right.
And I think what Mr. Johnson said, I think what I've said is, I don't think either one of us would be in favor for it if it was light industrial or planned development. I think what we're saying is that this process needs to be in a light industrial area versus out in the middle of the country. I don't see it any different in, something else that you need either commercial or light industrial for. And just feel like making it, and I agree with you, Commissioner Landine, I don't think if it was presented to us as light industrial, I don't think it would pass. And so if it won't pass as light industrial, we just call it planned development and then it'll pass. To me, that I struggle with a little bit. Even though I understand that with the planned development, we do have some more control over it. I will agree with that.
All right, commissioners, any additional conversation? All right, with that, I will take roll call. Now, the motion is to deny the application, so a vote yes would be to vote to deny, a vote no would be a vote to, I think we're all on the same page.
Yep.
But is a no vote to accept? Or do you need another motion?
Well, then we'd have to have another
You're
motion
gonna have
to
to have
approve
another
it.
motion, right?
Are we on the same page with that, Mr. Brown? So if we vote no on the deny, just if that happened, then that still doesn't approve the rezone, then we still have to make a motion to approve and go through that one.
Should approve it.
Well, you're just giving a recommendation, so.
Right, okay.
We usually do affirmative motions. That's where we kind of get.
Yeah, sorry.
We're just
that was-
recommending to the Board of Commissioners, that's right. All right, so let's vote on the motion.
Oh, sure.
Is everybody clear? Mr. Scott, you guys
Yep.
good?
Yep.
All right, Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Ensted,
Yes.
Commissioner Green,
Yes.
Commissioner Scott,
Yes.
Commissioner Landine,
No.
Commissioner Jungley is also a yes. So again, this is a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners. And all zoning applications, yes, so you can go to the Board of Commissioners meeting and discuss it there through public input and any other means you have forward. All right, application number 2, Mr. Brown.
Okay, application number 2 is a conditional use permit. The applicant and property owner is Nick Davy. The location of this is about a half a mile northwest of the city of Worthing. The parcel size is 7.78 acres. As you can see, the property is zoned A1 agricultural, as is all surrounding parcels or properties. Property is currently developed with a single-family dwelling and some outbuildings on the property. The applicant has submitted a site plan with the application. There is an existing, as I mentioned, an outbuilding on the property. It's a 40 by 64, I believe that's what it is. The applicant has submitted an application for Class 1 major home occupation, specifically identified that he wants to operate a mechanic shop on the property. The items included in the staff report, the standards for a Class 1 major home occupation. Again, in the unincorporated zoning ordinance, there is a provision for some commercial activities to occur on a property as long as there's a conditional, if it's operating within the dwelling, those are minor home occupations, do not require any permits. The Class 1 major home occupation has a number of standards, which I'll reference in the conditions. But it is limited to the people, the amount of employees on the property, the amount of accessory building can be used, the hours of operation, and some of those requirements. But there is no standard, as you're aware, that you can't do this or you can't do that as far as what a commercial activity. It just has to fall within what these standards are that are presented. So staff did review the application, did identify that this application as proposed and if meeting the conditions would be consistent with the Code of Ordinances and therefore would be recommended for approval by the Planning Commission with the 8 conditions that were identified in the staff report. With that, I'd happy to answer any questions that you have for staff at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Commissioners, any questions for staff?
Toby, was this that same piece of property that I looked at a couple months ago as far as,
I
I
don't,
thought it was,
not that I'm aware of, we did, the building, I think we permitted within the last year or two, I believe, on that part of it, but I don't believe there's been any applications on that property.
because I just thought that there was one for like a event hall and just, the property map looked real similar right outside of Worthing, so maybe it was just a different one that I was thinking of.
Yep, there was a rezone petition for the property near there, so, yep. But it was that petition that was denied, the rezone from rural residential to commercial, that was denied, but they are developing it right now with houses. So I think there's 4 houses that are going in there. But
All right, Commissioners, any other questions for staff?
thank you.
See you none. Thank you, Toby. All right, at this time, I will ask the applicant to come forward and speak about their proposal.
Nick Davy, 27953 471st Avenue. Yeah, like he said, there's not much,
Raise that
not
up
much
a little
more to add, I guess. It's just me running the shop, so it's a pretty low-key place. So, and the hours that are in that list, that's the hours that I usually work anyway. So additional traffic could be minimal. Can't see where it'd be much more than what's already on that road, you know.
Okay. Commissioners, any questions for the applicant? Nick, so have you seen the 8 conditions in the application?
Yep.
And one of them being nothing can be stored outside and it has to be in a fence?
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right, at this time, I'll ask anybody in favor of the application, please come forward and speak.
I'm Sarah Oudman, P.O. Box 37211 West 4th Street, Worthing, South Dakota. I almost said Indiana, sorry. Owner of record of the property next to Nick Davies' place. We support his petition to ask for this home occupation variance, so.
Thank you. All right, anybody else in favor of the application?
My name's Dirk Oudman. I'm the resident at 27943 471st Avenue, so the property next door to Nick. Yeah, we're in favor as well. I appreciate Nick, what he does for the community, the service he provides to us, and yeah, I'd love to see him be able to work near his home and not have to drive into Lennox all the time.
All right, thank you. All right, anybody else in favor of the application?
don't know if I'm in favor or what. I'm Marlene Sweeter, 47158 283rd Street, Worthing, clerk for Lynn Township. And we were just touching base with Mr. Davy to see if there's extra traffic on that road. And one of the conditions was to make sure that everything was neat on the place, and we wanted to make sure that that was carried out. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Yeah, I believe, just try to find it right here.
Number 3.
Yeah, number 3. All materials and equipment shall be stored in, enclosed building or secured outdoor, number 4. The permit holder shall comply with the roads authority, Lynn Township, access requirements, improvements, or standards, if any.
Yeah, so I think to answer your question, Marlene, it'd be 3 and 4, where all materials and equipment need to be stored inside and enclosed buildings to keep things neat and tidy. And then number 4 has the township lever in there that they have to abide by any driveway permitting or authorities of the township. And does that suffice? Yep.
Wanted to clarify those.
Yep.
Thank you. All right, anybody else in favor of the application? All right, anybody in opposition of the application? Seeing none, I'll close the floor to public input, and I'll ask for a motion from the commission.
I'll move to approve, Scott, with all the 8 conditions.
The second instead.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion, commissioners? Seeing none, all I would ask is that be a good neighbor with your business, and just watch the road, please, and maintain all that. And with that, I will ask for, I'll do roll call. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Ensted?
Yes.
Commissioner Green?
Yes.
Commissioner Scott?
Yes.
Commissioner Landine?
Yes.
And Commissioner Jungling is also a yes. Congratulations. All right. Item number 3, please, Mr. Brown.
Item number 3 is a conditional use permit as well. This is an application for Russ Vanderpool. He's the applicant and owner of the property. Subject property is approximately 1.7 miles southwest of the city of Harrisburg. Subject property is zoned RR rural residential, as is the adjoining property to the west. This area is what I would best call is a subdivision type area. A lot of the lots, as you can see to the south, were pre-density zoning, so those are zoned A1 agricultural. The RR designation allowed the single-family dwelling to be constructed. The property is improved with a single-family dwelling and accessory buildings that are totaling approximately 4,312 square feet on the property. This property was issued a conditional use permit in 2019 for an oversized accessory building / addition to allow up to 4,312 square feet on the property. The applicant is proposing to add on to the existing structure accessory building, which I believe would be the furthest one to the east on the property. This one would be adding on to that building for a total of 6,112 square feet on the property. So essentially what this conditional use permit is, it's an amending conditional use permit to the other conditional use permit, which limited the amount of total accessory building area on the property. Staff did review this application, did have some discussions with the applicant, and identified that this application to amend conditional use permit 0087 2019 to increase the allowed accessory building square footage on the property from 4,312 square feet to 6,112 square feet is consistent with the ordinances. and would recommend that, if approved, that it would include those 8 conditions that are identified in the staff analysis. Some of these conditions weren't placed on the original conditional use permit. As you're aware, staff started adding the number 5, which is the building can only be used for storage of personal property, and no commercial uses and commercial storage shall take place on the property. And so that would be an additional one that would amend essentially that original conditional use permit with the 8 new conditions on the permit. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have for staff at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Commissioners, any questions for staff?
Okay, thank you.
All right, at this time, we'll ask the applicant to come forward and talk about their plans.
Oh, Russ Vanderpool, 47111 274th Street in Harrisburg. Yeah, just looking to add on to the building. Kind of have a car buying problem and got a boat for the kids this last time, so just looking to try and keep everything inside.
All right, Commissioners, any questions for the applicant?
You're in agreement with all the 8 conditions?
Yeah.
Those buildings are never big enough, are they?
Really should have built that
Is this
last
one gonna do
way
it?
All right, I do have a question, just from your aerial view of your place there where we're looking at the sheds, it kind of looks like there might be some commercial use of the building right now. And with this conditional use, it says it'll be just for personal and not for any construction, because then that adds a whole nother where you have to home occupancy or other areas like that.
Right. No, the new building has just all personal stuff in it. I do park some trailers there during the wintertime when we're not working outside, but other than that, there's personal use.
But you understand that this will amend your previous, your previous one, so it won't just be the new building that can't be used for commercial, it'll be the whole building, even the old one.
Yep.
Yeah, you're aware of that?
Correct.
So basically, anything on your property now, if you have been using it for commercial, you won't be able to in the future.
Correct.
Okay, just want to make sure you're
Yep.
aware of that.
All right, Commissioners, any other questions for the applicant? Seeing none, thank you, Russ.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, at this time, I'll ask anybody in favor of the application to come forward. All right, I'll ask anybody in opposition of the applicant to come forward. Seeing none, I'll close the floor to public input, and I'll ask for a motion from the commission.
Motion to approve the application with 8 conditions green.
Second instead.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion, Commissioners? All right, yeah, just from the overhead view, I'm just concerned that it will be for personal use. So if there's no any discussions, I'll do a roll call. And this is to approve the addition for the building and the 8 conditions. Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Ensted,
Yes.
Commissioner Green,
Yes.
Commissioner Scott,
Yes.
Commissioner Landine,
Yes.
Commissioner Jungley is also a yes. Congratulations, everyone likes more shop space. All right, application number 4, Mr. Brown.
Okay, this next application is a conditional use permit as well. This is a conditional use permit. The applicant is Zach and Rihanna Northdurft, and the property owners Darwin and Vicky Reiners. The subject property is approximately 0.80 miles north of the city of Worthing. The property is currently zoned A1 agricultural, and all surrounding properties are like zoned. Property is developed. It does have an existing single-family dwelling on it, and it does have some outbuildings on it. The applicant is submitting a request to place a manufactured home on the property to replace the existing single-family dwelling that is on the property. It will be torn down or removed from the property. The applicant did submit a concept plan or site plan with the application. They intend to put the new manufactured home on the same site as where the existing stick-built home is on the property. Staff did review the application, did have some discussions with the applicants, identified that this application is consistent with the zoning ordinance, which does allow the placement of a manufactured home upon receiving a conditional use permit. Staff does find this consistent with the ordinances and would recommend approval. Does have 6 conditions that, if approved, would recommend that those be placed on the permit. With that, we have to answer your questions that you have for staff at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Commissioners, any questions for staff?
Thank you.
Oh, excuse me, Toby. So you said there is existing single family and that's to be torn down before this gets moved in, then correct?
Yep, we did put condition number 3 that it would be removed prior to issuance of a building permit on there. But again, since they're placing it on that, they're gonna remove it anyways, but we just wanna make sure that, you know, because we can't have 2 houses on that property, so.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Yep, thank you.
All right, this time I'll ask the applicant to come forward and speak about their application.
No, no.
Hi, I'm Rihanna Noderf. We live in 117 East First Avenue in Lenox right now. We would just like to tear down an abandoned house that my dad used to live in. It's been abandoned for 20 years, and it's about time it gets demolished. Would like to move a house there, so that's all.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions for the applicant?
Is this a new home or a used one, or?
It'll be a new one, yep.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, at this time, I'll ask anybody in favor of the application, please come forward and speak.
Zach Noderf, 117 East First Avenue in Lenox. I approve because it's going to be my new house.
Thank you, Zach. All right, anybody else in favor of the application? All right, I'll ask anybody in opposition of the application. Seeing none, I'll close the floor to public input, and I'll ask for a motion from the commission.
I'll move to approve Scott with the 6 conditions.
Second, Green.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve with the 6 conditions. Any additional conversation, commissioners? Seeing none, I will do roll call. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Ensted?
Yes.
Commissioner Green?
Yes.
Commissioner Scott?
Yes.
Commissioner Landine?
Yes.
And Commissioner Jungling is also a yes. Congratulations. All right. What number are we on here? Number 5 now?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
This last item is a conditional use permit. The applicant is Verizon Wireless, and the property owner is John and Deborah Berger's Trust. This property is approximately 3 miles northeast of the city of Harrisburg. Subject property is currently zoned A1 agricultural. All surrounding properties are A1 agricultural except to the south. There is a rural residential zone subdivision, Lakeview Estates. Subject property doesn't have any structures on it. This property did receive a conditional use permit previously for a cell tower on it. According to the ordinance, the application expires after 2 years if no work has progressed on the project. That happened, but now the applicant has reapproached staff and has resubmitted the application materials to propose the same tower on the same site. But essentially, the other conditional use permit is expired because it did not progress within the 2-year time frame. So staff did review the application materials. There is quite a few standards for telecommunication towers within the county. Staff did review all of those application materials to make sure that it did meet all of those standards. We did have some further discussion with the applicant and identified that this application is consistent with the standards of the county code of ordinances. I would recommend approval with the 9 conditions. The 9 conditions are generally the same as the previously approved conditional use permit that expired. However, we do add the new conditions as far as offensive type nuisances and then allowing staff to enter the site. And then again, the permit holder responsible for compliance with all other regulations. Since this is a cell tower, there is some other federal regulations and state regulations that must be complied with. Those have been, but just to make sure that those are consistent with that. So with that, again, staff did recommend approval with those 9 conditions there. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have for staff.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Commissioners, any questions for staff?
So if I wasn't brief enough, this is a new telecommunications tower, it's not an existing, it's be a new site. The applicant is not here tonight, but he is on the phone, is available for questions, so. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I will ask the applicant to give us a description of their application.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chair. This is Brian Cabot with Buell Consulting, agent for Verizon Wireless out of St. Paul. And I appreciate you accommodating me this evening here remotely. Sometimes you get 2 hearings in one day, different places. So appreciate that. As Toby pointed out, we had applied for this and were approved with a conditional use permit back in 2020 to build this facility. And the build plan changed, and I just found out here a few months ago, tower I thought had been built was not, and we're beyond our approval time frame. So we're back to respectfully request a new approval of it, and Verizon is eager to build in 2023.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, any questions for the applicant? All right, I have one question. So it's the same tower, it's the same height and everything that you have going on there, Brian?
That's correct.
All right, thank you. All right, if there's no other questions for the applicant, I'll ask anyone in favor of the application, please come forward and speak. Seeing none, I'll ask anybody in opposition of the application to come forward and speak. Seeing none, I'll close the floor to public input, and I'll ask for a motion from the commission.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the conditional use permit.
I'll second Scott.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any conversation, comments, commissioners? Discussion?
The only thing would be, do we have to have, does the motion have to be with the 9 conditions?
So we'll say the motion and the second
Include the nine.
includes the 9 conditions.
Correct.
All right, with that, I'll do roll call to approve the application with the 9 conditions. Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Ensted,
Yes.
Commissioner Green,
Yes.
Commissioner Scott,
Yes.
Commissioner Landine,
Yes.
Commissioner Jung is also a yes. Congratulations. See if we get a tower up this time around.
Thank you. Thank you all. Merry Christmas.
Can maybe put some south of Canton too.
All right, so with that, Mr. Brown, we already had our joint work session with the Board of Commissioners, and any other new business you'd like to talk through?
So there was an application that was considered by the Board of Commissioners since our last meeting, and that was an appeal of use 0068-2022, and that was by East River Electric for their outpost building. So the applicant did appeal your denial of that application, and they did resubmit some revisions to their plan based on, I think, a lot of the discussion that took place at the Planning Commission. And for specifically, they removed the barbed wire fence. And then they did have a engineered drainage plan that was identified. And they did put some screening, some trees, and a berm, I think, along the front of the property. And they did remove the second driveway, so they just have the one driveway on the north end of the property. But the Board of Commissioners did overturn and amend your denial of that application. So that was it. That was the item since the previous meeting.
All right. Commissioners, any new business ourselves? Seeing none, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.